Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this recorded session for Professional Women at Work Limited. My name is Akwiya Asari. I'm the CEO and founder of Professional Women at Work Limited. So we are a network of women who are vibrant, dynamic, and we're from all different backgrounds and industries. And we've come together really to share our interest in the workplace and inspire each other to reach our goals. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Ben Bearley, who is our guest. So Ben is a leadership coach and consultant and founder of Thoughtful Leader. Hi, Ben. How are you doing?
Hello, Akwiya. I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
So glad you've taken the time to join us today. I'm sure you have a very busy schedule. So we're really happy that you could participate today. Just going to pull up some slides to share.
No problem. It's actually about 8 p.m. on Friday night, so luckily I don't extend my work onto Friday nights generally, so that's good.
I'm sure you can at least manage to stay awake to the end of this session. What do you think, Ben?
Oh, 100% I can. It's only 8 o'clock. I'm all right. I'm good for that.
Excellent. So Ben, just go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a leadership coach, been doing that for the last couple of years. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time working in consulting and in leadership roles for around 15 years, so either middle management or program and project management roles. I spent a big stint of my time in consulting, about 5 years, and learned a lot in that in that space of time, getting exposed to lots of different workplaces. I live in Perth in Western Australia, and yeah, I think that about covers it from my background point of view.
Fantastic. I think we should probably explain how we know each other, because
Sure.
as Ben's mentioned, he's based in Perth, Australia, and I'm based in southeast England in the UK. So we didn't meet each other in previous roles or anything like that, but I actually found Ben through his podcast, the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I was trying to find some career advice earlier this year. I was just scrolling on, one of those podcasting apps, and came across Thoughtful Leader, and I actually liked the name Thoughtful Leader, and I thought, oh, this could be interesting. So I basically dialed into one episode, thinking, oh, that would be it. And I just found myself spending the hour going to listen to the episode before and the episode before that. And I was just really thoroughly impressed, because I just thought it was so insightful. I love the fact it was, as you say, Ben, at the beginning, short, sharp advice. It's just very quick, isn't it? How long is the session? Each episode, 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. I'm trying to spice it up a bit now. I have more interviews on because previously it was just a solo show basically, and now every so often I'll do an interview with someone so people can hear a different voice other than my own. So yeah, but generally 10 to 15 minutes.
It's just so great, and I found myself, like, I've listened to lots of podcasts obviously about careers in the workplace, but with yours, I think because it's just so concise, you do those takeaways, you do kind of follow up on some of the advice you give, and it's really easy to remember because there's not so much content coming at you. I think that's the message gets through basically for me, especially. And Ben also offers the first session, isn't it, as a consultancy, sort of one-off. It's free.
It's complimentary. Yeah, definitely. I call them a discovery coaching session, which is a bit of I don't know whether that's the right term to use, but to be honest, it's just a full coaching session, which I do complimentary. And the reason I do that for people is because, they may be interested in coaching with me, but you never know, because not everyone is suited to every coach. So I want to give people the opportunity to actually experience working with me so they can see whether they might want to do that for a longer period or not. And sometimes, quite a few times I'll coach with people and they'll get benefits from the session, but they say, oh, well, no, I've had this challenge and now I can move on with it, and that's fine. So there's no real obligation to do anything further than that. But it's good to give people the experience of that. I mean, it's pretty hard to expect someone to work with you for a long period if they've never really had that experience.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, you have a real understanding about the workplace yourself and how frustrating it can be at times, and that's something that I think I really connected with you on when I was doing the sessions. So I actually only was going to do a free one and just say, oh, that's the end of that. But when I actually met you and we got speaking on a number of topics, I realized, wow, this is just so helpful. And I really wanted to take action. I'm not sure if you remember, Ben, with our sessions, I kept on saying to you, I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And you kept on saying to me, you do know what to do. And I just kept on thinking, oh, I don't.
It's the amazing thing, because what happens is I remember it was particularly with your conversations, we would get to the end of the session and you go, oh, that was great. You know, it's great that we've come to this action. And it was actually you that came up with the action, but you would think it was me. And that's sort of how coaching works. So it's a bit strange how the process works, but that's sort of how it happens a lot of the time.
Fascinating stuff. So obviously, before I got together with Ben for this meeting today, I put some questions to Ben, and I think it's good for us to delve into them right now. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Crack on. So, although I love the words thoughtful leader, can you just really explain what it is to our listeners?
Yeah. So to me, a thoughtful leader is someone is a leader or a person in a leadership position who leads with intention. And what I mean by intention is they think about the actions that they're taking and they consider the impact on the people around them. So that might be their team members or their colleagues or their boss or whoever it might be. And that's the key. That's the key point. It doesn't mean that a thoughtful leader is always nice and friendly and has to be Mr. Nice Girl or guy, and take the easy path and be, I guess, not be confrontational. But it does mean that if they're doing something that's controversial, or that they might have to restructure a team or have a difficult conversation, it means they actually think about the impact that might have on the people around them. And so one misconception that people often have when I talk about thoughtful leadership is that, it's sort of introverted and non-confrontational and soft and fluffy. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It's just about considering the impact on the people you are leading. And I think that gives you a much better result in leadership, because you're more likely to create an environment where people, enjoy coming to work and understand, what's happening and what your point of view is and how you're going to lead them. So that's what I think a thoughtful leader is.
So it's not necessarily a manager, which is what people get confused with, isn't it? Leadership and management sometimes get confused, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. So it definitely doesn't have to be a manager. Often it is, but as you're alluding to there, you can obviously lead from anywhere in the organization. You can lead all sorts of things without having to have that title. So yeah, absolutely, you're absolutely right.
And obviously, Ben, I've never asked you this question before because our sessions were focused on me. But why did you become a coach?
Yeah, good question. So it's interesting because when I was in my leadership roles, I found myself, the bits that I really enjoyed about them were the mentoring, coaching, helping people develop, trying to motivate them, setting them up for success. So removing barriers, trying to help them do good work, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So more about the people than sort of results. So and one of the things I've been quite careful with my leadership career is to try to make sure I have a focus on results as well, because leaders obviously need to get results. You're not in a leadership position just to be nice to everyone and develop your people necessarily. You also need to get some sort of result. So, but I found my focus was naturally on the people side of it. And so I really enjoyed the coaching, as from a leadership position, coaching people in my team and also helping people develop. And then, yeah, that's really why I became a coach, because coaching gives me the opportunity to help other leaders develop, and yeah, help them succeed basically. And I really enjoy that people development side of things. So, and I've naturally I really love seeing what makes people tick and trying to sort of work through different situations and understand how we might create a positive outcome. I've always enjoyed that part of it. And so, yeah, and coaching really suits me. for that reason. Yeah.
It does suit you, actually. I can't actually imagine you doing something else, which is obviously not what you, it's not something that you actually probably thought about doing when you were growing up. What was the career, your dream kind
No
of
way.
career? What was it?
Oh, that's interesting. So my dream career was, first I wanted to be, we had a rubbish dump near us, and there was a person who drove the tractor, who would push the rubbish into piles, and I wanted to be that. That was when I was very young. And then I grew out of that one, and then I wanted to be an accountant because accountants work in the city, and I wanted to work in the city, and that's it. That was my only reason for that. So then I went through and went, oh, okay, I want to work with animals and all this sort of stuff, and I actually started doing a zoology degree, changed that to biochemistry, so I ended up doing a biochemistry degree, and then I realized I wasn't that great at biochemistry because I wasn't that passionate about it. So I moved. I finished that degree, but then did a computer science degree as well, and that's where I started doing software development, basically, quite a few years ago now. But yeah, that was those are literally my aspirations. And when I was when I was sort of growing up and early in my career, coaching wasn't much of a thing anyway. Like it certainly wasn't something people spoke about much. And the only time I came into it, came across it, was from a leadership point of view, like when you're a manager and you coach your people. But I didn't really ever know it was an actual profession that someone could do.
Now you said some of those jobs, I actually can imagine you being a computer software and stuff like this, because your website is really quite good. Did you design it yourself?
Yeah, so I use WordPress. So basically, I don't do any coding anymore. But I know that it's a huge advantage actually with the internet space, because I understand it well enough that I understand how things all work and fit together. But I don't do it myself anymore, so I pay people to do those things for me. Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? The careers that we wanted to do, growing up, like you said, looking at that dumpster thinking that's really cool. Mine was really, really ridiculous, but when I was young, I really wanted to be a weatherwoman. I just thought it was such a great job to tell people about the weather.
You shouldn't rule it out. I mean, maybe that's
I think that ship has sailed, but you never know. So obviously you mentioned the different sort of degrees that you were studying, the courses that you were looking at. But how did you actually become a coach?
Yeah. And so once again, sort of a topsy-turvy path, but I did a lot of consulting work where I went into a lot of companies and dealt with a lot of executives and senior leaders there, and I saw how the workplace works, and I sort of developed this passion for leadership during that time. So I started just writing about leadership through Thoughtful Leader. So I started blogging about it, and I didn't have any plans for that. And that's been that was about 7 years ago now. So I didn't have any plans for doing anything. I just enjoyed writing because it helped me structure my thoughts, because I was always interested in, why is this leader getting a bad result in their team, or why am I struggling to motivate this person, or whatever it is. And I loved blogging about that stuff to try to unpack it and try to work out, okay, what is the source of this issue and how can we try to shift things and improve it. So then I started writing, then and publishing on Thoughtful Leader, and I built up a following over time. And people subscribe to my email list, and that's into my podcast and all those sorts of things. And then people just started contacting me, like, about leadership stuff. They'd ask me questions and ask for advice, and I would give advice, and I'd really see what the key thing for me was I would hear from them what is bothering them, what they're struggling with, and all those sorts of things, which is really interesting to me. And then I think I was heavily into the online business space. Like, I was trying to build an online business, selling leadership products and those sorts of things, and I still do that to some degree. And through that, I listened to a lot of resources on online business, and I came across people who were doing leadership coaching, and I thought, okay, that's a thing you can do. So I got qualified in that, and that's how I started doing that only a few years ago, really. Yeah, And I started doing it in addition to my day job. So I was in leadership roles and I was also coaching at the same time, usually before or after work, or I might take a day off to do coaching work as well. So that's how I got started, yeah.
And can you think back to your first sort of assignment that you had? And, you know, because obviously you didn't have experience, so to speak, in doing this job. So someone had to trust, I guess, that you knew what you were doing and, you know,
Yep.
take that leap of faith in you. So can you kind of go back to that time and let me know what it was like for you in the early days, how you found your feet and so on?
Yeah, early days. So I was doing a lot of free coaching as well. So I would
Mhm.
just offer coaching sessions, and I would build experience that way, because then it's a lot, less stressful for people knowing that I'm a new coach. And I'd say, hey, it's a free session. I would coach my friends and people I know as well. That was a good way to get experience. And then after a while, I guess I just had enough experience that. And I would do the similar thing that I do today, really. I would coach someone, and if they were interested in further coaching, they would know what it's like already. And so they know whether it's worth coaching with me or not. And a lot of it, to be honest, is about personal fit, I think. It's not, there's thousands of good coaches out there, but not every one of them will be suitable. I've come across coaches that are a lot more directive and challenging, and they'll go, oh, come on, Okoya, what are you doing? Come on, pull yourself together, let's do this. And it depends on your style. Some people love that stuff, and it's not really my style. But there's different. So it's sort of a coach for everyone, I think. So so yeah, if the sort of free work was resonating with them, then they would potentially be interested in paying me for the work. And I started off with low fees and all those sorts of things, just to get started. That's generally how I did it. Yeah.
So reputation is everything in this business. You need to have obviously the right personality to bring to the coaching sphere, so that you can obviously spread it through word of mouth and people start to learn about your existence and want to sign up to do sessions with you and so on. And
yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think you've spoken a lot about what you enjoy about coaching, but it did surprise me when I was listening to one of your podcasts when you mentioned that you weren't so great at the beginning at public speaking. It wasn't one of your strengths, but it's something you overcame. Do you mind speaking a bit about that?
Yeah, that was so. One of my big things that I believe as well is that your leadership weaknesses are really important. So to understand what your weaknesses are as a leader is critical. Not that you want to get focused on them and negative and oh my goodness, I'm no good and that sort of stuff, but you want to make sure you cater for them if you need to, and try to improve them where you need to, or to use the strengths of the people around you to make your weaknesses less of an issue. But what I found was, for me, public speaking was a huge issue. I had a huge fear of it all the way through university when I had to do some presentations and things like that. I would shake, my voice would shake, and I would read my notes like this, and it was horrible, like really terrible public speaking. And so I knew, and particularly when I was starting to get into consulting, I knew that this was going to hold me back, because if you avoid opportunities to speak in public in a career like consulting, when you have to give presentations or proposals, or you have to work on client projects and give briefings or whatever it is, you're just going to be limiting yourself. So I ended up working quite hard on that. And what I did was, the best thing I did was go to join a Toastmasters club for 2 years. And Toastmasters is obviously an international organization that you can join all around the world. And it's usually, it's not that expensive to join. You pay membership fees, but it's not, it's quite affordable. And it's a really cool community of people. And the one I joined was called St. George's Toastmasters, which was a tennis club near the city. And I would go there, and I think they started at 6:30 in the morning, actually, which was quite unusual. A lot of so we would do 6:30 till I think 8 o'clock or 8:30, and everyone gives presentations at Toastmasters Club. And I did that for 2 years. And my goal there was to become not scared of public speaking. So after about 2 years, I felt I was confident enough, and I felt like I had some good skills there. And so then I stopped going to Toastmasters. But But if anyone out there is wants to improve their public speaking skills and actually do a heap of good networking as well, I'd recommend joining a Toastmasters club, or at least going along and being a guest for a while, just to see what it's like. Because you meet a bunch of people from all different careers and all different fields who are interested in public speaking and improving their skills. And yeah, it's a great networking opportunity.
And that was a very brave thing to do, I have to say, Ben. I don't think many of us could actually go into that environment and do that. So, you know, what kind of, I know you realised that it was an issue that was holding you back in your career, but what was the moment that you actually said, no, I'm not going to avoid this anymore. I'm really going to face this head on. How did that manifest?
It's a good question. I'm just trying to think. Do I remember the exact moment?
I like asking you a tough question, you know.
Yeah, you're turning it back on me now. So I think it was, I have quite a well-developed risk mindset. So I'm quite good at seeing the negative consequences of things. So I like to plan things and have a routine and all those sorts of things. I can be quite easygoing as well, but predominantly I like to plan and be prepared. So the reason I'm mentioning that is I can also see the flip side of when I think, okay, if I don't do anything right now and this just stays the way it is, what's going to happen down the track? And I just felt like it was going to really hurt in the long run for me not to take action, more than it hurt to actually go and do something. And I sort of got in the habit of I like thinking of it in a way like, if you can physically put yourself in a situation where you have to respond, you'll just work it out. So for example, if the first time I went to the Toastmasters Club, I was quite nervous. I'd exchanged emails with people and said, can I come and have a visitor session or whatever, and they were all very friendly, but I was quite nervous because I didn't know what it was like, and it's a new environment, and there's all these people I don't know, and they're public speaking, and I wasn't going to have to speak in the first session, obviously, but I was just observing. But I sort of think, the more you just put one foot in front of the other and move into a position where I walk through the door, someone says hello to me, I have to greet them, I have to get involved. And I sort of try to think of it as you just put yourself in that position and you'll sort of respond. And that's sort of how I started thinking about it. So I was doing less thinking and more just doing things without worrying so much about it. And yeah, that's sort of how I got to that point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, obviously it's a huge challenge for a lot of people, and it surprises you sometimes when people say that they have a fear of public speaking, because they might appear to be quite confident. I think my fear is putting myself out there. That's one of my things. I really dislike having a social media presence and all the rest of it, but it's something I have to do for the business. So like you said, it's baby steps. You start small, you do a few things here and you do a few things there, and eventually it becomes quite normal. And you don't have the same sort of fears around.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because it's the exactly what you're talking about there. I mean, I went through a lot of that with Thoughtful Leader in the early days, because I was posting about leadership, and the first thing that goes into your mind is, well, for me, is like, oh, who are you to talk about leadership, right? I'm not the CEO of the biggest company in the world and all these sorts of things. Who am I to share this information? And it took me a while to get over that feeling, and to some degree you never really do, but you just keep going. And so that's a very common one, that imposter syndrome around getting yourself out there. Yeah, like you say, it just becomes more comfortable the more you do it, and after a while it'll still come up from time to time. Probably you go, oh, I'm doing something new, and why would anyone respect me in this role, or who am I to do this thing? But yeah, you just get on with it, and what I found as well is no one's thinking about you as much as you are. Everyone else is thinking about their own stuff. They're very, very rarely sitting around going, oh, look at Ben, that post, I can't stand him, he's horrible and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe someone is, but that's fine. So yeah, everyone's really got their own stuff to work on. They're not so consumed with what we're doing a lot of the time.
And just broadly speaking for yourself, was it easy to kind of make this career switch into coaching? You know, was it something that you was like, it was almost natural? Because I know you said you were doing it anyway, really. So it wasn't like a big pivot, they call it pivot, or you know, you switch or something like that. Was it a huge change for you? Did you have to think differently in this way when you were coaching? Was it just completely different from your regular-ish 9 to 5 kind of roles, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. It certainly wasn't easy, and I took the very slow approach. I guess if you go back to the original, when I started blogging, it's about 7 years in the making. And the switch happened about probably 2 years ago, when I actually switched from actually created the business and did my own thing. Because previously I was operating as a sole trader, which, you know, in Australian business it's like you're still sort of working for yourself, but you attach a company to your own identity. You don't create a separate organization. Whereas this time I went, okay, I created a proper business to run Thoughtful Leader that way. And now, I mean, now I do coaching, but I also do some training, leadership development through workshops and things like that, and also some consulting work. So I do have a mix of things, but it was that gradual transition which was really helpful. Because for me particularly, I'm not very comfortable with making a huge shift where you've got all of a sudden you go from steady income to potentially no income. So it's much better to do, in my opinion, to do it as a gradual process, to gradually ease into it, and particularly in the coaching space, because coaching takes time to build coaching clients, because a lot of coaching clients come through word of mouth and referral and things like that. But if you're not coaching many people, then not many people are available to refer you. So you can't just expect it to boom immediately either. And so it's really helpful to have some other way of making your enough money to get by without having to rely on getting 1 million clients straight away.
Yes.
Plus, you know, in any business, if your first feeling is, oh, I'm desperate for money, it's never a good look in any business to run around looking like you're desperate for business, because people think, why are they desperate? That's how I did it, which was sort of that gradually the halfway, and diversifying how you get your money as well was very useful for me.
Yeah, I think what you've described sounds like very sensible in terms of a business approach, because obviously a lot of people start businesses and they're not always so successful, and having something to back you up, you know, whether it's another job that you're currently working in, is obviously a good way to do it, to make that shift when you're confident and you're ready, and to take the complete gamble on yourself. I think that's huge, isn't it? It's having that faith in yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, well, one thing I found the shift was really useful for me was to going out on my own was it was that I felt freer to publicize myself. Whereas when I was working full time and also coaching, I felt quite self-conscious about, are my employers going to see me saying, hey, come and do coaching with me? And it seems a bit dodgy, and I didn't feel quite comfortable with that. Although it never was an issue, because I wasn't taking business away from the people I was working for anyway. But it just felt a bit, it wasn't quite, like there was a bit of an integrity gap there for me, I felt like. And so when I went out by myself, I'm like, okay, great, I can publicize myself, and I felt free to do that. Yeah. That was a big difference for me.
Yeah. It's really interesting what you just said, because, you know, obviously a lot of people can relate to that, so it's fantastic. And speaking of clients that you deal with, you know, who approach you, what kind of issues do you find people face commonly in the workplace that they actually need to seek out a coach like yourself?
Yeah. I think what I found out a while ago now was, when I first started Thoughtful Leader, I sort of thought that I was helping people be more thoughtful. Leaders become more thoughtful. But actually what I realized in the last couple of years is, well, not really. You're actually attracting people who are thoughtful leaders. You know, it's very hard to just, you know, convince someone who's not thoughtful, or you know, try to turn someone into a thoughtful person who's not. So actually I was attracting people who are thoughtful. So the reason I mentioned that is a lot of the people who come to me I would consider as thoughtful leaders. And so some of the challenges that generally thoughtful leaders have, if I was going to, you know, summarize it, would be having difficult conversations, holding people accountable, managing their time is big as well. So overwhelm is huge, and it's, yeah, the really common one is overwhelm, about taking on too much, thinking about everyone else first, like their team, and is my team okay, and then not worrying about themselves, and then burning themselves out. That's quite a huge challenge as well as dealing with politics and things like that. Yeah, and dealing with challenging bosses as well is a huge one, because it's almost, you know, almost no matter what level you're at in the organization, you have some sort of boss, even if you're the CEO and you've got a board of directors or whoever it might be. So um, they're the main things, I think, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, one big one I
more.
missed. Confidence.
Oh,
Building
yes.
confidence. Huge. That's a huge one. That's probably one of the most common ones, which I missed out. And I love coaching about confidence, because what happens is people come to me and they say, oh, I don't feel confident. And you know, and I've got a confidence problem. And then you start working with them, and all of a sudden you start working on the things that are causing the lack of confidence, and you no longer actually talk about confidence anymore, because confidence is really like a symptom of a problem as opposed to the real problem. So I find it's the environment that's causing them in some way to feel lack of confidence. Like maybe you can't public speak or whatever, you know, you're scared to do public speaking, and that's why you feel unconfident. Well, then that's the real challenge here. It's not really that you're not confident. That's not really the issue. The issue is that this is the thing that's causing all that problem. So yeah, I found it really interesting dealing with confidence.
You know, we just find, a lot of us find the workplace so challenging because there's so many unspoken rules to navigate, and you don't often get told about them, do you? You kind of come out, if you come straight from education of some sort, you know, go to uni and you're told you can be anything you want to be, and you actually believe it. You get your fantastic degree and you're armed. And you think, you know, I'm the hotshot that's going to show everyone how good I am. And you go into the workplace and it's just a minefield for a lot of people. It's like, what exactly is going on here? It's hard, isn't it? I think one of the hard things is maybe things that you can say that can offend people. I think, you know, you think it's not offensive, but it could be offensive to somebody else. And I think it's just human nature, isn't it? All the things that we think is okay to do in the workplace might not be okay. And it's a learning curve. And yeah, I've definitely had to learn that.
Yeah, it's and you're right. You know, you go from this, you know, you've gone through school, let's say the traditional path. Okay, if you're talking about corporate, you know, then it's then you might go from school, then you go to university, and then you'll jump into the workforce, and you really have no idea what there is in store, to be honest. Like it's quite strange when I think back. I didn't go into a massive business though. I didn't go to some of these huge consultancies or anything straight away. So it was sort of easier for me, like you ease into it with a smaller business, you sort of understand how it all works. But yeah, like you say, it's just such a mix. There's such a mix of personalities, motivations, you know, people who don't want to be there, they want to be doing something else, people who love what they do and they really want to get and climb the ladder. You've got people who don't really know what they want to do yet, but they've done this to start with and they want to see where they want to go, but they're still not sure, so they're not quite loving their work either. And then you've got the politics. People want to be, you know, be powerful and earn a lot of money and all those sorts of things. And it's just such a huge mix of different preferences and flavors and nationalities, cultures, and everything, all into these organizations. And trying to get them all to work together is such a massive challenge. and I think to some degree, there's a problem with leadership in general in that many people, let's say I'm the most technical and the best engineer in my team. Let's say I'm an engineer. And then I get promoted to be a manager and I have to manage all these people, and I don't really do engineering much anymore. I'm more about managing the people, but I don't really have any skills in that. I'm not naturally inclined to that, and I don't really want to manage people, but that gives me more money. So I'll do that because I'll get more money. And then you get this problem where the people who are leading, who aren't necessarily, they probably wouldn't want to be in that. If they could get the same money in a different role that allows them to use their skills better, they would probably do that instead. So I think there's a problem where you've got people in leadership roles that shouldn't be, and don't even enjoy it. And then you also have people who are really good at climbing the career ladder, and they might be highly political and they're highly motivated by achieving goals, and so they go up the ranks, and then they pop out and they're like one of the executive or the CEO. And they are so good at achieving the goals and getting to that point. But are they the best people to be managing people and leading people? And I think in a lot of cases, no, they're not necessarily the people that are good at that, but they've made it to that position, and so they have to do that. And so that's where I think we've got a real challenge. And, to be honest, it's a big problem, a big question for me. I don't really have a great answer to how to solve that one. But that's where I see some of the complexity that you're talking about arise as well.
I think just experience, I guess, and over time, I've had multiple jobs. So for me, it was learning through changing my career and going into different types of workplaces and sort of seeing the similar characters and saying, oh, I didn't handle that particularly well with that type of personality in the last job. So now I know what I can do this time around, which is different. So it is kind of like a lessons learned exercise sometimes, on how your behavior can trigger, as you've taught me, different types of behaviors in others as well. So it's self-awareness, isn't it? I would say maybe being a bit more self-aware can potentially help you in your career a lot.
Oh, 100%. And if you, and the good thing is when people are aware and they gain that awareness, they can really do exactly what you're describing, which is, they can do things differently the next time. So you're learning from those issues you've had in the past. And I don't think everyone's at that level though. So I think some people have a good awareness, a self-awareness, and they have a strong sense of that and they can learn, and other people have less self-awareness. And that's something, I think you're right. That's a key thing, like the emotional intelligence and self-awareness aspects are really key in growing leaders that can adapt their behavior and learn from their mistakes like that.
Yeah, I find it's because I'm always trying to, because as you know, I work in quality assurance and it's always about improvement. So I think it's kind of instilled within me, like, how can you improve yourself? But then you do meet people in the workplace who say, I'm not going to improve myself at all. Everyone else needs to adapt to my particular personality. And I think that's where sometimes it becomes quite challenging, for me anyway, where someone's not going to change a behavior which is quite disruptive to others, but they're refusing to do it because this is the person they think they are, and they're not willing to make that change. So yeah, then I think that's sometimes where you see a little bit of conflict coming into the workplace. And in your experience, you've had any conflict in the workplace, Ben?
No, none.
Yeah, I mean, it's a silly question to ask, really. But
conflict. The short answer is yes, I have had conflict in the workplace.
Yeah, tell me about that and how you've managed to resolve, conflicts in the workplace that involves yourself.
So, yeah, and like we just discussed, the mix of different personalities and people, you're going to get some conflict and different goals and things like that. And I think consulting was one area where I just had, I wouldn't say I was running around having conflict, but there was so much opportunity for conflict as a consultant, because you come in from these big consulting organizations and you land and you go, oh yeah, okay, now we're going to restructure you or develop a new operating model, or we're going to write you a new strategy for you and all this stuff. And people, a lot of people don't want you there. they want you to go away because they're like, well, we can do this ourselves. We don't need consultants. You're just going to fire us or whatever, you know, restructure us and all that sort of stuff. And you know, it's not incorrect what they're thinking, because sometimes that's exactly what happens. But often, you know, often the consultants like me come in to try to help the organization, and a lot of consultants, and I was one of them, I felt they had good intentions. Like, I wasn't there to go and tell them what to do and change everything that they did, they'd been working hard for in the past. So yeah, that gives rise to a lot of conflict, and, you know, a lot of passive aggression, people not responding to you, people ignoring you, people challenging you in terms of, you know, what do you know, and all those sorts of things. And I think I definitely found the best way to deal with those things was really to understand their point of view and listen to their opinion, and take note of their experience and what they've done in the past. So, and in many conflicts, I find in the workplace, a lot of it's from not really taking time to understand the other side. It's about, well, I've got an agenda and I've got a goal, and you're in the way of my goal, so I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter what you think. So really respecting the knowledge of other people, and the experience. And I particularly had a few roles where I had to deal with very experienced people who were a lot older than me. So I think one example I can think of, I was about 30 years old, went in a program management role, and all of a sudden I had all these people working for me as I was a consultant, and they were internal people. And I had people working for me who were, you know, 20, 30 years older than me. And they're going, oh, who's this young punk, you know, trying to tell me what to do, right? And so one of the things I learned pretty quick was listen to their experience, take their opinions on board, and where you can, use them, you know, adopt their suggestions as well. Because, and after you do that for a while, you'll build trust, and then you can start to influence them and say, well, how about we do it this way? And you start to get your own ideas incorporated as well. So I found that was huge, building that trust, to try to break down that potential for conflict, and really understanding their point of view. So the whole empathy thing, which is huge in, you know, in leadership literature now, it's like empathy is super important in building trust, and it's true, because you don't have to have done exactly what they've done or experienced what they've experienced, but you'd have to have a try at understanding where they're coming from, basically. And I think that's the root of a lot of the conflict. And once you can understand where they're coming from, you can start to see whether, okay, well, maybe we can accomplish something that helps both of us achieve something, rather than me get everything and you get nothing. Yeah. So I guess that's the answer.
That's really good. I mean, honestly, that's really, it's looking for the things that you have in common with people, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And most people go to join a particular workplace for different reasons, of course. And like you said, it could be the finance, whatever. But I tend to find a lot of people that I work with want to be there because they want to contribute. They want to do something good for the company. So, you know, you can always find something in common with someone. And you can always compromise. You've taught me that. And you can always find a way to work with anybody. I've heard people say, I can literally not work with this person. But I don't think that's true. I just think maybe you need to think of another approach, isn't it? And perspective, and, you know, how you can engage with someone in a different type of way. You might have to change your way of doing something.
And it's often when we see conflict, and you know, people often, I find it's because people, and it is the empathy thing, but often the first instinct of someone, if they feel like they're being challenged, can be to fight back or resist or to avoid, or whatever it is, the fight or flight type of instinct. And that can put up huge barriers, because then the other person sees that behavior and thinks, oh, they're, you know, Koya's such a nasty person, I'm not going to talk to her. And then you've just got two people putting up barriers. And if you can resist that initial temptation to fly off the handle or ignore them or avoid them or fight back, you can start to build that trust, because you can only build trust when you're interacting. You can't build trust when you're both going, you know, I can't work with that person, I'm not going to talk to them. It's impossible. Yeah.
And I guess that's how coaching can help people overcome their challenges in the workplace, by showing these different sorts of pathways to resolution, really, isn't it? And that's the benefit of coaching.
Well, it's part of it, yeah. And I think coaching, the amazing thing about coaching for me is that it can change people's mindsets, the way that the whole coaching conversation. And one of my favorite bits about coaching is when someone says, we've had a conversation and someone says to me, or the person says to me, oh, I never thought about it that way. And you can see something switch inside them. And obviously all we're doing is talking, to each other. So there's only two people talking, and outside the world is staying the same roughly. It's not like you've coached and this amazing transformation has happened over there that's going to make your life brilliant. But what's changed is in your head, or in the client's head, and that gives them a completely different view of the challenges and the obstacles, or the things they were perceiving as issues before. And one of the things I often ask for people, after coaching sessions, what was your reflection on that session? How do you feel now? And all those sorts of things. And a lot of the stuff that comes back is I feel a lot more positive. I feel a lot more optimistic. And if they've had a bit of this mindset change, so they see the world slightly differently, they can go out and they can start to just attack these problems a little bit differently than what they would before. And I think that's where you can get a big shift, because you can go, okay, rather than meeting that person in a way that I'm expecting them to be nasty and I'm going to put all my barriers up, you know what, I'm going to go and ask them for their opinion today, or whatever it is, right? And just approach the problem in a different way. And that happens when you start seeing the world slightly differently, and that can happen through coaching.
It must be really satisfying as well, when you see that change and then you hear what actually took place. Like, obviously the client may have gone out and actually, following a conversation with you and a moment of realization, has done something and then come back to tell you actually it did work. And I remember saying that to you quite a few times, like, wow, Ben, it did work. Not because I had no faith in what you were telling me, but because
then you would also say, oh, that thing you told me worked. And I'm like, well, no, I didn't tell you to do that. That was the thing you came up with, remember? So you would assume it was my magical master plan, but it never was. And that's the thing. The thing that's satisfying, as you say, is that, yeah, sure, I can be part of that transformation and I can help facilitate that, but it's all in the other person. It's not like I'm saying you should do this, you should do that. It's all actually them generating it, and that gives them so much confidence, because they go out and they've done it. They've come up with the idea through the conversation. They've gone, I'm going to go do this. Then they come back to me and say, I've done it. And that builds all this self-efficacy. Like, they believe that when they take action, they can succeed. And so it just sort of reinforces itself. And I think that's what's so satisfying, because it's not like the coach is the puppet master making them do things. It's really that they're just helping them see things differently, and they go and run with it after that.
Yeah, it's absolutely true what you said. And I think for me, the coaching sessions I had with you, what really brought it home for me is that communication is the most powerful tool you can have in the workplace, if you use it well. And some of the resolutions that you can do are very simple. I think you start thinking, oh, it will take so long, and it's going to be so stressful, and I'm going to have to spend all this energy. And really, it could be a simple conversation, which doesn't even require much time or effort. And suddenly, things in your life are much easier because you took the time to speak to somebody who you may be having issues with. And I think when you resolve kind of issues on the workplace, it has such a positive impact on me anyway, because it takes up less space in my head. I don't have to think about any issues. And that's why I think the workplace is so fascinating, because we spend more time at work than anywhere else, probably, most of us, on a full-time job. And it does have an impact on us, doesn't it, as people?
Yeah, and I think this is great what you're doing with professional women at work, because you've you're creating that space where people can, in a way, it's sort of like a forum where you can share information. Or how do you do this? You know, how do you? I'm having this challenge. So that's pretty valuable resource, I think, for people to get involved in.
Absolutely. And I just wondered, from your opinion, actually, like, what's the kind of best piece of advice you've been given yourself? I know you asked this in your podcast. I actually taken this from you. When you have a guest on, you do ask this question. But I want for yourself, like, what do you have any advice that you've stuck with? And
I've got two. If I can mention two pieces. So one of them was from a actually, I guess it wasn't more advice, but it was more about the way that this person talked to me and made me realize that something's possible that I didn't think was. That's what it was. So this is when I was back doing biochemistry, and I was at the end of my biochemistry degree. So I was in third year. I realized I wasn't that great at it. I mean, I was getting average marks and I was passing, but I wasn't super passionate about it. And the lecturer who was sponsoring me, like a professor there, he said to me, he said, well, he noticed this, he sort of knew, and he goes, well, what do you really want to be doing? And I said, well, I mean, I've been really good at maths, and I really enjoy working with computers and things like that. And he said, well, why don't you go back and do computer science? Why don't you try something else? And at the time, it felt like, because I was 20 years old, it felt like that was the biggest deal in the world to me. Like, oh, no, you can't go back and do another degree. That's going to take another 3 years, and I'll be wasting my time, wasting my life. And he just made me realize that, no, it's not that big a deal. Just go do it, try it out. And so I tried it out, and I loved it. And all of a sudden, my grades skyrocketed because I was really enthusiastic with what I was doing. And then the rest is history. But that was like this pivotal moment where he just had this little intervention with me where he was just going, go on, you can try it. It's not that big a deal. And that was really, really valuable. So sometimes, if people are thinking of making a switch or doing something or not doing something, sometimes it's not as big a deal as you think it is, especially if you can create conditions where you can try something gradually without jumping all the way in at once. You can see how it's going to work. So that's one. The second one, another valuable one, was one of my old mentors who I still do some work with today, actually. And he was a director at one of the consulting companies I worked for, and he was giving feedback to someone about, I think, as a part of a job reference. So I was going for a new job somewhere, and he gave feedback to this referee, and then he told me later what he told them, and he said, Ben can accomplish anything he wants because he's really talented. He just needs to find out what that is. And that's one thing that stuck with me. Because at the time I was doing, management roles and all this sort of stuff, and I wasn't really loving it as much as I wanted to. I like certain parts of it, but I didn't love the whole thing. And that sort of stuck with me. And when I sort of found the coaching angle and the leadership development space, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. So that was really, just finding out what you want to do and then going for it. And it's easier said than done, perhaps, but luckily I know now what I want to be doing.
Fantastic. I think those are amazing pieces of advice. And I love that from your mentor. He's basically saying that you're great at anything you can put your mind to. Just figure out what that thing is.
Which is not true at all. I'm not good at, there's many things I'm not good at, but he's always had a very high opinion of me.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's another good thing you just mentioned about a mentor. And even if you don't have a coach, or you can always find somebody to mentor you as well. That's another way of getting that advice and maybe helping with some issues as well.
Mentoring's fantastic because it's very rare that it takes a bit of courage, I guess, if you don't naturally develop a mentor relationship. Sometimes you can, it just sort of happens in a workplace, but if you don't naturally develop that relationship, but you happen to know someone who you think would be a great mentor and you just sort of want to ask them, I think it's very rare for someone to sort of not to say no to that, because people love to share advice, right? People love to share their expertise, and it's really an honor to be asked by someone, can you mentor me and help me through this situation? So I'd encourage people, if you find someone that you think would be great to mentor you, catching up with them once a month or something like that for coffee and things like that. It's really a valuable resource, and people, especially as they get more experienced and older, just love sharing their experience and helping people out who are trying to, do something with their career or whatever it might be.
Sadly, it's actually up to our time now. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour. Time just flies.
Time flies. That's right. When we talk, it can go for more than so long. Yeah. Great conversation though. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much for just spending the time with me. Actually, it brought back such lovely memories of our time doing some coaching too. We always had a bit of a laugh, didn't we?
Yeah, and that's something like one thing. If anyone's wants something to check out, that if they haven't seen it, it's I'll send you a link later. It's what's his name? Ben Zander.
Okay.
If you've come across Ben Zander, he was the conductor, or may still be, of I think the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, and he has this The Art of Possibility, which is a book of his. It's really amazing, and in it he speaks about rule number 6, and he goes, always remember rule number 6, and rule number 6 is don't take yourself so seriously. And so when I coach with people, it's always much more enjoyable to have a bit of fun during that time as well. And you can talk about some serious stuff, but it's much better when you're enjoying yourself as well.
It's true. Don't take life so seriously is a very good piece of advice too.
Well, don't take yourself so seriously.
No,
that's what it was.
True. Yourself, yes. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm being corrected here.
No. Well, that's not my. Yeah, that's his quote. But I'd encourage you. I'll send you a link, because you check out the people can check out that resource if they haven't come. It's he's an amazing guy, and he's done a really great TED talk as well. Yeah, I'd recommend checking it out.
Before we go, Ben, I just wanted to know: is there anything exciting that you're working on? Anything you're doing?
I did a bit of group coaching this year, which I hadn't done much of before. So I'm thinking of doing some more of that next year. And I try to keep it relatively smallish, so groups of 3 to 4 or things like that. And I'd probably be doing it online, but I've just got to come up with the right themes as well, because obviously group coaching has to really follow a theme of some kind, so you get like-minded people working together. So I'm thinking of doing some more of that next year. So no concrete plans yet, but that's on the agenda.
Sounds amazing. So sad to say goodbye now, but
well, that's all right. We can talk.
We keep in touch, Ben, don't we?
We do keep in touch. Yeah.
Ben is great in the fact that even when we finished the coaching sessions, he said, just keep in touch. And I thought, okay, because that's one thing I'm very bad at. And I'm amazed I've actually kept in touch with you.
Well, that's good.
That is great. I mean, it shows that you had such an impact on me as well, that I'm, and we do bounce emails back and forth. It's really nice.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, and I'm really interested in hearing more about professional women at work and how you go with that, and how you keep building that, because I think that's a really worthwhile thing to be doing.
That's like I recommend that everyone checks out the Football Leader podcast wherever you can. It's on everywhere, and obviously Ben's website, which is amazing too. Yeah, actually, what I love, I forgot to mention, is after the show you do these great show notes, and then you do like some articles, like the blogs. It's just great. So even if you wanted to revisit it, just quickly go and on the move. And I tend to read some of the articles when I'm traveling into work as well. So
cool.
Keep doing the wonderful work you do, Ben. It's all free.
Thank you for plugging all my stuff. I appreciate it.
It didn't feel like plugging. Yeah, no, it's true when I use it myself.
Yeah, you're right though. It is all free, and I write a new article every week and release a new episode every week, and I do that to structure my thoughts as well, because I really enjoy that, and working out what's why is this person having this problem at work or whatever. I really find that interesting. So yeah, check it out.
Great. Well, thank you everyone, and we'll speak soon. Bye for now.
Great. Thanks, Sequoia.
Bye-bye.